So, verse 19, then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression on his face changed towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego. And he spoke and commanded that they heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. Now this furnace here, it's likely to be a brick kiln where they would make bricks. They have found some in the plains around Babylon where they made bricks. Possibly one of those are this kiln. And they heat the fire 7 times more than usual. In verse 20, he commanded certain mighty men of valor who were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego so they can't escape. They get some of these army guys, and they cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, their turbans, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. We're told that they are cast into the fire with all their coats and clothes and everything on, even their turban, because normally the Babylonians would strip people naked before casting them into a furnace to roast them alive. But here Nebuchadnezzar is in such a rage that he has them tossed in fully clothed. Don't even stop to take their clothes off and strip them down. Just throw them in. Therefore, because the king's command was urgent and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego. So those army men die as they're trying to put these 3 into the fiery furnace. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he rose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire?" And they answered and said to the king, "True, O king." "Well, look," he answered, "I see 4 men loosed, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." There's a 4th man in the fire. And that 4th man, his form was like the Son of God. That 4th man was not like the Son of God. That 4th man was the Son of God, Jesus Christ, in the fire with them. Jesus was in the fire with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego. This is what is called a theophany or a Christophany. It's an Old Testament appearance of Jesus Christ before he's born as a baby in Bethlehem. We've seen it a few times in our Genesis study on Sunday mornings as well. But Jesus is there in the fire with them, the good shepherd caring for his sheep. Listen, when we go through a fiery trial, there are people who are watching us go through the trial. And Jesus will be with you and be with me in the trial. And those people that are watching, they see Jesus with us. As we walk through the fire, as we walk through the trial, they see Jesus with us. And it's a testimony to them. And they say, "Look." I remember when I was, it was before I was saved, it was right before I was saved, my wife and I started attending church. We started attending a Calvary chapel. We lived in Florida. We lived in this little town called Gulf Breeze, Florida. And we went to a Calvary chapel for the first time on a Wednesday night. It was so new to me. I didn't know churches were open other than Sunday morning. And so I didn't know churches had midweek services. We're there. And in our little community of Gulf Breeze, which only had a population of like 20,000 people, there had been, a short time before that night, there had been a drunk driver who hit a car on the main road through Gulf Breeze one night that had teenagers in it. And there were 2 teenage sisters that died in that car accident. And it was big news. You can imagine in a small town like that to have 2 teenagers die in a car accident, and they were sisters. And it was all over the news. Everybody knew about it. And I can still see in my mind, 25 years later, going into that little sanctuary at Calvary Chapel And I recognized the father of those two little girls from the newspaper articles. And he's there in the sanctuary during worship, and he has both his hands raised, and he has his head back and his eyes closed, and he is singing his heart out to Jesus Christ. And it so impacted me. It so impacted me. Look, Jesus is with that guy. And I didn't understand. I remember going home and the next day calling my sister. I said, I went to church last night. And then after she got up off the floor from that, I said, you know the story that's been in the news? And I shared it with her. And my sister said, he's got to be out of his mind. He must have lost his mind. Because nobody could be in church worshiping God after that happened to them. But to see it, it's a testimony. And you go through trials, I go through trials, we go through hard things. And as we walk through it, Jesus is with us. And other people around us, non-believers, heathens, that you work with and that you go to school with and that live next door to you, they see you walking through it with Jesus, and they see Jesus with you in that trial. And it's a testimony to them